bad video game movies. I know, what a total shocker. Who would have thought that specific stories fleshed out and designed for one specific medium simply wouldn't work in another? Yeah, occasionally you do get a good one that slips through the cracks, but for the most part, video game adaptations are complete trash. The following films are no exception. Now, a specific rule for this video is that I kept it to one movie per franchise, because let's be honest, if I didn't, the Resident Evil films would take up most of this list. In addition, before anyone asks, I will be doing a best video game films list, however, I'm going to wait for April for that one. I want to see if Sonic 2 can manage to get on there. I loved the first one, so I have high hopes for the sequel, and hey, it gives you all something to look forward to. That being said, let's get some dishonorable mentions out of the way. Resident Evil Afterlife, an unbelievable pile of shit that gave us more of a Wesker we wanted, but not a motivation that made any sense. The characters are lame, the slow-mo overtakes the picture to the point of annoyance, and it's just amazing how after 4 films, I still couldn't give 2 shits about Alice. Fuck this movie. King of Fighters. This is a god-awful film, but if I'm being honest, I've never actually played the games and have no personal attachment to them, so I just kind of saw this as a typical bad action movie, nothing more, nothing less. Maggie Q and Ray Park are both awesome in the film, but not even they can save it. As someone who doesn't play the games, this movie just isn't worth harping on in my opinion. And the last dishonorable mention goes to Warcraft. Now, if you saw my review for this film when it came out, you know I hated this movie. However, the reason I can't justify putting it on the list is because as much as I don't like it, apparently it was a faithful adaptation of the source material. Many fans of Warcraft actually loved this movie, and I guess the reason I didn't is because I've never played the game. But according to fans, it was a worthy adaptation, so screw it, I'll throw you guys a bone. If you love Warcraft, that's great. I personally didn't outside of the makeup effects, but it's safe today. With that said, here are what I consider to be the 10 worst video game adaptations ever made. Now, while I've never played the Double Dragon video game, when I was a kid, I watched the Double Dragon cartoon religiously whenever it was on. That show was badass. That was really what I was hoping for when I went to watch the Double Dragon movie. But did I get that? No. I got 2 surfer bros, the T-1000 with a Vanilla Ice haircut, and an Abobo that somehow hasn't died from heart failure. Oh, and also there's Alyssa Milano, because, you know, why not? I mean, the games didn't have much plot to begin with, but my point is, the animated series showed that you could take a relatively plotless game and make something cool out of it. What the hell was this film's excuse? Now, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against the actors in this film. Mark Dacascos is a badass, anybody who has seen John Wick 3 can tell you that. Scott Wolf, Robert Patrick, and Alyssa Milano are all good actors. They've shown this in many other projects, but none of them are able to make the material work here. To their credit though, with writing as bad as it is here, I don't think any actors could have elevated the material. At the end of the day, it's just a standard lazy who gives a shit video game film. Nothing more, nothing less. Coming in at number 9 is Max Payne, a painful adaptation that took one of the coolest concepts for a video game and turned it into an hour and a half of Mark Wahlberg screaming at Valkyries for no apparent reason. The movie has damn near nothing to do with the video game. Mark Wahlberg is practically sleepwalking through the role, Mila Kunis and Ludacris are hilariously miscast, and the movie commits the ultimate sin of wasting one of my favorite Bond girls, Olga Kurylenko, in a thankless role. Full disclosure, I didn't care for Hitman either. Both films are actually neck and neck for the number 9 spot, but I went with Max Payne because Hitman, at the very least, does resemble its video game. This in no way feels like Max Payne. It should be this gritty, dark, serious noir mystery film. Someone like Matt Reeves should be helming a Max Payne movie, not the asshole who butchered the Die Hard franchise. So yeah, Max Payne. It sucked hard, let's move on. Yes, the first of 3 Uwe Boll films that managed to make it on the list. Believe it or not, I was actually kind of hyped to see Alone in the Dark when it was in theaters. Not because I was a fan of the games, but because of how awesome the trailer was.
Alone in the Dark.
Yeah, looked pretty fucking cool, didn't it? Then I saw the movie, and I'll be damned if that trailer didn't write a check this boring-ass movie couldn't cash. When the first 5 minutes of your movie is an opening title crawl explaining the background of the film, and the crawl makes even less sense the more the movie goes on, that's a pretty big goddamn problem. The action is ridiculous, the wire work is a joke, The monsters look awful, and the story is beyond uninvesting. Uwe Boll has these actors delivering lines in the most awkward ways possible. And don't even get me started on Tara Reid playing a scientist. Yeah, just put glasses on the blonde chick from Urban Legend and poof, instant scientist. I have nothing against Tara Reid or anything, but this was not the part for her. It's a shame I hated this movie too, because I'm a big fan of Christian Slater. Whether it's Prince of Thieves, Mr. Robot, Breaking In, Broken Arrow, he's an awesome actor. Honestly, he deserved better than the thankless role he had here. Fuck this film.
Alone in the dark.
I think it's impossible to have a worst of list for video game adaptations without discussing Wing Commander. Now, full disclosure, I have never played Wing Commander, however, I have seen all the cinematic cutscenes for the game on YouTube, and to say the game and its story were badass would be an understatement. It was a cool space opera with actors like Tom Wilson, John Rhys Davies, and Mark fucking Hamill. So being that this movie was created by the same guy who created the game, Chris Roberts, surely it would be a faithful adaptation of the source material, right? Well, that depends. Do you want to see Fred and Shaggy from Scooby-Doo in roles that were once occupied by Biff Tannen and Luke Skywalker? Hopefully your answer was no. And look, I actually like both actors. I like Freddie Prinze Jr. I think Matthew Lillard is one of the most underrated actors in Hollywood, but they were not the right choices for these roles. Both are incredibly miscast and do not do these characters justice, but to be fair, the characters aren't really written like they are in the games. And this isn't just the heroes. Look what the film did to the fucking Kilrathi. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. In addition, the names of the characters in several scenes are spelled wrong. I'm sorry, Chris Roberts, how do you fuck up your own material this bad? I don't get it. But to cap it off, the CGI was terrible, the plot was non-existent, the writing was a joke, and it wasn't a good representation of the game by any stretch of the imagination. Nothing else to really say. Wing Commander was pretty bad.
Wing Commander.
Now, this is an interesting one for me, because when I first saw Silent Hill Revelation in theaters, I surprisingly liked it. My old review is still up on the channel if you don't believe me. You know what, never mind, don't watch that review, it's pretty wretched. Well, a few months back, my fiance and I were looking for something to watch, and being that we were both fans of the first Silent Hill movie, we decided to put this on. We literally got 20 minutes into this film and turned it off. I rewatched it all myself yesterday for purposes of this list, and without any irony whatsoever, I cannot tell you how I ever liked this movie. Like, I got nothing. Now, in all fairness, a lot of this plot does follow the events of Silent Hill 3, I'll give it that, but none of it is told well. The only decent performance is from the lead actress. Sean Bean, Kit Harington, Carrie-Anne Moss, and even Malcolm McDowell are practically sleepwalking through their roles, and just seem so uninterested in being here. The plot itself makes no sense with the first movie, Radha Mitchell only shows up for a short cameo, Silent Hill doesn't even look like the Silent Hill from the first film, and with all the references to the third game thrown in, it feels like they were trying to overcorrect something that didn't need to be corrected in the first place. So, yeah, I have no earthly clue how I enjoyed this film in theaters. None at all. Just stick with the first film, it's more than conclusive, and it saves you about 2 hours of mental anguish.
Already here.
Oh, we ain't done discussing Mr. Ball just yet, trust me. Bloodrayne may not be his worst film, but it's damn close. Whereas only Christian Slater was wasted in Alone in the Dark, Bloodrayne wastes the talents of Kristanna Loken, Michael Madsen, Meatloaf, Ben Kingsley, Billy Zane, Michelle Rodriguez, Udo Kier, and a smattering of other actors who are way above this material. Is Rain killing Nazis in this film like she did in the games? No, because for whatever reason it was decided to set this film 200 years before that point. What was so hard about a vampire killing Nazis? It's why I bought the damn game and it's why I wanted to see the movie. Evidently Uwe Boll did do this with one of the sequels, but I never bothered seeing the sequels because of how bad this film was. The gore in the movie is unbelievably fake and over the top. And not in like a cool, artsy Tarantino sort of way either, I mean in a first-day film student sort of way. Kristanna Loken isn't a bad choice for Rain. She's really not. In fact, when I saw the trailers, I was more than satisfied with her casting. She's a badass, she's a trained martial artist, and can command the strong presence that a character like Rain requires. But god damn, the dialogue does her absolutely no favors. And the sad thing is that most of the dialogue isn't even what the screenwriter wrote. Guinevere Turner, the writer of American Psycho, was the screenwriter, and Uwe Boll went behind her back and changed most of the script.
And I just want to say for the record, for anyone who's seen Bloodrayne, that I would say that about 20% of what I wrote is on the screen. The producer called me when the movie was just being finished, and he said, "Don't be alarmed, Wynn. Uwe changed a lot of the script." Uwe doesn't really speak English. And then he let the actors take a crack at it. I was just like, let him go. I'm gonna let go. And I have to say that the only person at the premiere at Mann's Chinese Theater who was laughing out loud was me. I was laughing out loud like, oh my God. It's like a $25 million movie, and it blows. I mean, it's like the worst movie ever made. It's like, is it Showgirls worthy in terms of like how it's so bad that it's campy? I think it is. I think it's gonna ripen.
Yeah, it's pretty goddamn depressing. It wasted its cast, it wasted its potential, it wasted the screenwriter's material, and it took a giant shit all over one of my favorite video games. Fuck this movie.
Bloodrayne. The adventure begins.
Oh yeah, you all knew this was coming. The first Mortal Kombat movie was so damn good and so successful that a sequel was fast-tracked. The problem is, they moved so fast on the project that they couldn't get most of the actors back, they couldn't get the same writer, and they couldn't get the same director. So immediately out of the gate, you have actors who are supposed to be the same characters from the first movie, who look nothing like the characters from the first movie, and dear God is it distracting. Look, I don't care how good an actor James Remar is, and he is, but you are not passing him off as the motherfucking Highlander, okay? It's just not gonna happen. But that's the least of this movie's problems. It tries to cram in way too many characters, to the point where you actually forget most of these characters aren't even in the movie. The CGI and action are atrocious, the acting is some of the worst I've ever seen, especially from Talisa Soto. The story craps all over the first film, which is, in my opinion, still one of the best video game adaptations, if not the best. So, in that regard, this was beyond insulting. Say what you will about the Street Fighter film from 1994, at least that movie knew how to be a fun ride. Yeah, it's campy as shit, but it's beyond entertaining for what it is, and I've always had a soft spot for it. When it comes to The Legend of Chun-Li, however, I don't think they could have made a more boring Street Fighter movie if they tried. Did you ever want to see Bison as an Irish businessman?
Of course!
Did you ever want to see Balrog being Bison's bitch?
Of course!
Did you ever want to see Vega played by the guy from the Black Eyed Peas?
Of course!
Did you ever want to see Nash portrayed as a stoic cop with no personality whatsoever?
Of course!
Hopefully, your answer to all of that was...
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Yeah, I can't even comprehend this one, guys. You can hate the 1994 film all you want, but that film was never boring. Kristen Krug portrays Chun-Li like she's barely fucking awake, and it's impossible to be invested in her character. Michael Clarke Duncan and Robin Shou, yes, Liu Kang himself, are both in this movie, pulling off the only passable performances as Balrog and Chun-Li's mentor, and not even they can save this. The writing is insipid, the action, when it's actually there, is beyond insulting. The acting is god-awful for most of the cast. This is one of those movies where it's impossible to tell what the people behind it were thinking. If you wanted a more realistic Street Fighter movie, fine. Hell, that's pretty much what the original film was trying to do. But you need to respect the characters, you need a compelling story, and you need to keep the momentum going as the film progresses. If you can't do these things, well, this is pretty much going to be the result. House of the Dead is a special kind of bad movie. Like, you have to actively try to make a movie this horrendous. And when I say movie, I use that term very loosely, because about half of this film is just intercut video game footage at the most random points. And I don't mean like, oh, they recreated the video game footage. I mean, they just randomly cut footage from the video game into the movie to be lazy and overextend the runtime. It's like, we don't have a script, so we'll just shoot some random shit on the fly and put video game footage to make it full length. Genius! This was Uwe Boll's first video game adaptation, and it remains his worst. The acting is god-awful from everyone. No one gives a good performance in this movie. This movie has Clint Howard, Jurgen Prochnow, and Ellie Cornell, and Boll can't get good performances out of any of them to save his life. They call this movie House of the Dead, when in reality, the house is just a random cabin with a big-ass roof that we don't even see until the end. The explanation for the zombies is some of the most ludicrous garbage I've ever heard. The zombie violence is tame as fuck for an R-rated film, and even when it does get gory, it looks so fake you can't take any of it seriously. The camera angles and continuity are off throughout the entire film. Like, for example, this scene. The character clearly shoots a shotgun, and the camera spin shows her with a handgun. This movie is so laughably bad, it's actually sort of amazing. What's even more amazing is that there is one movie I disliked more than this. Let's take a look.
Back to the House of the Dead.
I've been waiting for you for a long time.
Now, I'll admit, this is kind of a personal bias to an extent. Resident Evil is my favorite gaming series, and none of the Paul Anderson films ever measured up to the best of the games, or even the worst of the games. However, with those first 5 movies, I could at least shrug and say, hey, if you enjoy it, go ahead and enjoy it. Just keep them as far away from me as possible. I could not even do that with this movie. Not only does it disrespect the Resident Evil games at every turn, but it treats the people who did like this film series, who were invested in this film series, like complete fucking idiots. To the point where I can't see anyone liking this movie, not even from a guilty pleasure standpoint. The first 10 minutes of the film has the rest of the films not make any sense. Like, none of them. It disregards every plot point in the series, and even retcons Super Alice's origin. And here's the thing, this might be more forgivable if there were different writers on each film, but no, all of these movies, all fucking 6 of them, were written by the same guy. Paul Anderson said in interviews that he had all this mapped out from the beginning, but there is no way in hell that's possible. The continuity is so fucking off with each passing film, it feels like he wrote each one over a weekend. But surely the filmmaking can't be as lazy and hackneyed as the writing on display, can it? No, it's even worse. I challenge you, fucking challenge you, to find a worse edited movie. I'll fucking wait. There are so many cuts. During the action scenes, every scene becomes a clusterfuck that is impossible to understand. Yeah, you know what? Say what you will about the video game footage in House of the Dead, I can at least tell that it's video game footage. The lighting, sound design, action, and fight choreography, all of it's terrible. I mean, this film is a marvel. It can barely be put into words how horrible it is. It absolutely baffles me to no end that Paul Anderson went from making one of the best video game adaptations of all time in Mortal Kombat to making the absolute worst in Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. As a fan of Resident Evil, I took a lot of abuse over the years from this series, but this garbage was the straw that broke the camel's back. This was the one that just straight up took the right-hand turn into Assholeville. If you want a more in-depth analysis of this movie, I'll leave a link to my old review in the description. But I'm sorry, there is no video game movie worse than Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, and you will never convince me otherwise. So when it comes to the worst video game-based films, what films would make your top 10? Please let me know in the comments. Please keep an eye out next month when I count down my favorite video game films, and please subscribe if you'd like to see more.
Is that all you got?